Hello and welcome back to Gary's Garage, and in this episode I'm going to be procrastinating so that I don't have to do any wiring. At the end of the last episode I was thinking about what can be done so that I don't have to do any wiring just yet, and the first of those is going to be getting the wiper mechanism fitted back in. Obviously I'm going to need to put this in where it goes, and the wiring and everything else is going to have to work around it. So the first thing is going to be this, and then the next thing that I want to do, again something that kind of needs to go in first before wiring, is going to be some kind of heater. Originally we put all the wiring in first, and I then had to try to squeeze a heater in around all the wiring, and well, it just wasn't easy, and I ended up with making up a couple of tiny little vents to go in this dash, and it was a small bit of shaped plastic and a tiny little 60 or 80 millimeter radiator, which just about put out enough heat to demist the window, but it would never make the inside toasty. So I think what I want to do now is try to make up a better heater, something that will allow me to actually drive it in the cold weather, because, well, even in the middle of summer in the UK, it can still be pretty cold. So I think wiper and heater are on the agenda first, and then once I've got those in place, all the wiring can be made up to go around it. So let's make a start with the wiper and get that installed. So this contraption here is what was my heater for the last 3 years or so, and it's basically some bits of foam plastic type advertising board chopped up and duct taped together with an 80mm radiator and a very weak fan, and it was just about good enough to keep the windscreen demisted, but that's about all. So I need to do something better than this. I still am going to need something similar to go up under the dash to provide the demister, but I'm hoping that I can feed it from something a little bit more substantial than these two little radiators. And that's where one of my old hobbies comes in. And here I have a PC cooling radiator. So this is a 45mm thick 120mm by 240mm that takes two 120mm fans, and I'm hoping that this will make quite a good little heater core to go in there, with maybe 4 vents coming off, 2 to go up to the dash and then 2 to blow off down by my feet, and that should give some warmth to the rest of the cabin. But this is just a bare radiator, so I need to make up some kind of shroud to go round it that will give me the ability to direct the air off to where I want it to go. And it might be quite nice if I could make use of the existing slider on the dash to direct where the heat goes. So I need to start making a heater box, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to go to Project Binky extremes and make a fully functioning cardboard template first, but I think I'll just go at it straight with steel and see where we go from there. So that's now the lid securely made up and attached to the radiator. So this was a couple of days ago that I finished this off, and I then went onto the internet to try to find some outlets that I could attach to this to go off up to the dash and maybe blow down onto my feet to give general heat within the cabin. And whilst I was looking for that, I found at a very good price a complete heater, which I've got in a box just down there. So let me pull it up, we'll have a look at it, and we'll then see whether I'm going to do my original plan of cannibalise that bit for parts to make this work, or whether I'm going to throw this bit in the bin, give this radiator back to my friend, and use what I've bought off eBay. Well, an unboxing just wouldn't be the same if I wasn't doing it at the workmate. So let's have a look at what has arrived. So we have some flexible hose, a couple of short bits of heater hose with some 13mm to 16mm 90-degree silicone elbows. We have two braided hoses complete with some AN fittings. They look like they may be -12, pretty beefy ones anyway. We have a sort of dash vent, one of, a little control panel for selecting a temperature, a fan switch, 3-position and off, and we have a heater unit itself with a pretty decent fan on the back. And what I was originally looking for were these screw-on 50mm outlets, but this is obviously a complete working unit. It's got a built-in valve on the top here. Now the only problem might be is that this is a bit wider than this, and I think that the width is going to be the problem with just using this, because the transmission tunnel and basically the whole car is very narrow. So my plan with this was to sit this kind of on top of the transmission tunnel in front of all the new brake lines that we've run, and this should stay nicely within the confines of the vertical area above the tunnel, whereas I think this will be a bit wider and it might start to encroach onto the onto where your feet go. So I think what I'm going to have to do is go and offer both of these up in the car, and if I can make this one fit, then obviously that would probably be the better option. It's designed for it. It looks like it's got a more substantial heater core inside it than this old radiator, and if not, then we'll stick with this, and I will look at stealing the fan and the outlets and maybe some of these hoses. So I think we need to move into the car now with these two and offer them up and see what will fit where. Okay, so we're in the car now, and the idea was that the heater would go somewhere around here. So with my custom one, I was thinking something about like that. That sits really nicely on top of the tunnel, and it would just need a small fan on the front, or maybe a couple of PC fans, slim fans inside the box that I've made, and then the vents on here to blow out. So that was my first choice. Now other options, for example, I could mount that up against the bulkhead. It still keeps it high enough, it's well away from the pedals and from my feet, and then the width doesn't really matter, it doesn't sit down too much below the dash, and if I put my little pad panel back on here, you probably won't actually see that from a normal seated position. So that's two mounting options for this. And with the new one, so the options are probably fairly similar. It could go there, sat down low, but these are starting to get a little bit close to the pedals. There's probably still enough room there on the bottom one on both of them to clear the clutch pedal. Maybe with a nice shaped panel up the side, that would sit quite nice. I could again go up higher with it and sit it a bit higher. Mounting options aren't quite as good there. Again, it would need to hang from the top. I could maybe look at mounting it that way up. There's a metal tab in there at the moment that's stopping it going all the way up, but that's another option. That does keep the bulk of it up high. It would certainly simplify the pipework routing for the outlet ducts, because they're all going to be up then at dash level, and then it's just the fan that drops down. So again, that's another option, but that does make it a bit more difficult with the plumbing, which is on the back, and then it's going to have to kind of come down and loop round. So the plumbing side of that isn't quite as nice. There's the other option of turning this the other way up, which again, I don't think that's really going to work. Or if we turn it that way round, again, all the plumbing is at the bottom, but unless I put a big kind of panel here to cover all of this, you're going to see quite a lot of this. So I hate to say it, but I'm still liking the idea of going with my original one, and maybe even mount it across rather than up, because that did seem to sit quite nicely, and it's shallower. There's options on this. There's 3 different positions for the inlet and the outlet, and I can use any one of those 3 on either to route the hoses in the best way. So the only thing then is the fans. But I do quite like that idea, because it puts all the plumbing over that side, which is where I want it coming in anyway. The air ducts can come out of the sides to the dash and maybe out the front. And then I can fit a fan underneath. So yes, there are options, and I think I'm going to now have to sit in here for a little while longer in a slightly more comfortable position and try to figure out which option is going to be the best for me. So by the time I come back, I will probably have made a decision whether I continue with that solution or not. We'll find out by the end of the video, probably. So as you'll have just seen, I've taken this apart and actually turned round the heater core so that the pipes are facing the opposite way. And the reason for that is that actually it fits in pretty nicely when the pipes go off that way, but it doesn't really fit in very well at all when the pipes come off this way. So I've got myself into position. So that sits up under there pretty nicely. It's fully up against the bulkhead at the moment because that's just the easiest way to hold it, but it will eventually be rotated down by a few degrees more towards horizontal, and that just takes the pipes away from vertical, or towards vertical, and away from the bit of bulkhead here, and that should give me enough room to get a couple of pipes on and loop them round. That also puts the fan just a little bit further towards the firewall, and I think that is going to be pretty nice. And the mounting point, again, it's nice and easy. It's probably just 4 threaded studs hanging off the bottom of the bulkhead to hang that at just the right position. And the other thing I'm going to need to do, now that I've turned this round, is move this little mounting bit here, which is where the cable goes. I've put in the original heat slider there, which comes out to a piece of cable there, a piece of wire, and as you pull the lever up and down, that changes the heat. So that's the same thing as that little rotary dot knob would have done that came along with this, but if I can reuse the original, then why not? So I think what I'm going to have to do for that is slice off this bit of bracket and weld it on up here. This feels like aluminium, so with the TIG welder I can slice that off, weld that on here, and that should give me enough length on there to get the coverage that I need. Well, I will get this secured and get this all mounted up and figure out what I'm going to do with the cable. It might even actually have to come round from the other side with a longer one of these cables, but that's something to battle at a slightly later date. But yeah, for now I shall take this apart again, permanently mount this heater core this way around, and look at adding the mounting brackets onto there. I have another present, and these are the original demister vents from an Anglia, and they smell like an Anglia, which is about the only thing going into this car that does smell like an Anglia. So that's the heater bolted up into place and the cable for the heat control all in place. I will need to also just put something on there to hold that cable as that slider's moved. That is just moving there and rubbing against the paint, which obviously I don't want. So I think the next thing to do is going to be to fit these vents up under the dash, and then I can work out the routing for the sort of 1 3/4 inch hoses that come off of that. And I've also got some 16mm heater hose, which needs to go from the outlets on here, loop through, miss all of the heater outlets and the brake pipes that are up here, and go up to the bulkhead fittings. So that's now the demister vents all hooked up. So the next thing is to sort out the heater hoses coming off here, loop round and up into the bulkhead fitting. So that's the heater hoses pretty much in place. This one here just needs to come down just a fraction more onto the barb, but that is something that can be done when it's not in such a tight position. And they run down there alongside the pedals and up, and I'll put a couple of rubberized P-clips on those to hold it in place. And the slider works nicely, and should be able just about to see as I move that the valve moves on the inside, and the ducts are in and up to under there. So I think the only thing that's left is to apply some power to the fan, and let's see what happens. So we should have low speed Sounding good. Medium speed. And high speed. And all three speeds are working. So yeah, low speed has got quite a, you know, a small bit of airflow coming up onto there. Medium speed, yeah, more. And high speed as expected, quite a lot. So if I wanted to at a later date, I might hook up this lever here to these outlets, and that might then allow me to choose where the airflow goes. If I find that it's not getting enough onto the dash, onto the windscreen, I might need to add something on this so that it blocks off the outlets that come just out under the dash so far. But that is looking pretty good, and I'm really happy with that. And that's about all I've got time for today. But I'm really pleased that I've got the heater now basically all up and running. It's all plumbed in, it's all ducted in. The electrics basically work, they've been tested. So join me next time on Garry's Garage, when I think I'm not going to be able to put off doing the wiring. Thanks for watching. Bye.